The weak pre-dawn light was just beginning to paint the edges of the city sky when 16-year-old Imani laced up her worn-out sneakers. Every Saturday, a silent ritual, tiptoe out of the small apartment so as not to wake her mother, pin on the simple, laminated badge that read, "Feed our elders," and set out on her rounds. It was a secret she kept, this volunteer work. Not out of shame, but because it was hers, a quiet pact between her and the neighborhood that had nurtured her, a place of faded storefronts and resilient spirits. She didn't do it for college credits or accolades, she did it because she remembered a stranger bringing food when her own grandpa was too sick to cook, a kindness that had bloomed in her memory. She wanted to be that stranger for someone else. That particular Saturday morning, the air held the gentle promise of spring, a soft blue sky arching overhead. Imani felt light, her backpack filled with carefully packed meals. She had one last delivery, Mrs. Watson, an elderly black woman whose apartment overlooked the park. Mrs. Watson could barely walk anymore, her husband a casualty of a war he'd returned from physically, but never truly in spirit. Imani clutched the warm container of stew, its aroma a comforting presence. She crossed the street, a girl in a gray hoodie, pockets stuffed with granola bars and applesauce for any seniors who might need a little extra. No rush, no misstep, just a teenager on a mission of quiet care. Then, the screech of tires. A police cruiser, driven by a white officer Imani would later know as Officer Kincaid, swerved aggressively, mounting the curb with a jarring lurch that sent the container flying, from her hands. Eggs, destined for Mrs. Watson's breakfast, splattered across the grimy sidewalk like a burst of yellow tears. The hot stew spilled, its warmth instantly stolen by the cold concrete. "Stop. Stay right where you are." The voice wasn't a request, it was a command, cold and impersonal, the voice of a system that had already judged her. Imani froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. Why? She was just delivering food. She'd done nothing wrong. Two officers, Kincaid taking the lead, sprinted towards her as if she'd planted a bomb, not dropped a box of groceries. "Hands up. Get on the ground. Now." Officer Kincaid's shout was sharp, filled with an aggression that seemed wildly disproportionate to the sight of a teenage girl and spilled food. Imani's mind struggled to catch up. I'm just delivering food," she stammered, fumbling for the "Feed Our Elders" badge pinned inside her hoodie. "Look, I have my badge. You match the description of a suspect involved in a local robbery." Dark hoodie, dark pants, Kincaid cut her off, his eyes, cold and dismissive, raking over her. He didn't see a volunteer, he saw a stereotype. "Suspect? I'm 16. Please, I was just..." But her age, her badge, her terrified innocence, none of it registered. They saw her deep brown skin, the tight braids peeking from under her hood, and their perception was sealed. Before she could utter another word, she was slammed face-first onto the rough sidewalk. The impact stole her breath, the gritty concrete scraping her cheek raw. A searing pain shot through her as Kincaid's knee pressed down hard onto the back of her head, grinding her face into the pavement. "Stop resisting," he snarled. Resistance? She could barely think, let alone move. Her arms were wrenched behind her back. Panic, cold and absolute, clawed at her. I can't breathe," she gasped, the words a desperate, choked whisper, a horrifying echo of cries that had resounded in too many similar encounters across the nation. A crowd was gathering. Smartphones rose like a constellation of accusing stars. Voices, angry and fearful, began to swell. "She's just a child. Hey, what are you doing to her? She didn't do anything wrong." From a balcony above, Mrs. Watson's frail voice cried out, laced with terror and outrage. "Let her go. That girl came to bring me my food. She's a good child." The elderly woman, who had already known the grief of a husband lost to the invisible wounds of war, now watched in horror as another young life was threatened before her eyes, a life that had only sought to offer her kindness. Imani's vision blurred. The shouts of support and outrage seemed to come from a great distance. The weight on her neck was crushing, the world narrowing to a terrifying pinpoint of pain and suffocation. "This is how it ends," a distant part of her mind whispered. "Just for wearing a hoodie, just for being me." Then, through the haze of pain and fading consciousness, a new voice cut through the cacophony. Calm, deep, and imbued with an authority that seemed to momentarily still the chaos. "Officer. That's enough." The crowd parted. A tall, powerfully built black man stepped forward. He moved with an almost preternatural calm, his presence a sudden anchor in the swirling storm of an unfolding tragedy. This was Agent David Carter, Imani's father. A man whose life had been a quiet testament to discipline and controlled strength, first as an elite army ranger in theaters of conflict, most people only read about, and for the last 2 decades, as a highly respected senior special agent with the FBI. Officer Kincaid, momentarily startled by the authoritative interruption, glanced up, irritation etched on his face. "Stay back, sir, this is official police." Agent Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He reached into his jacket, his movements economical and precise, and produced a small leather case. He flipped it open, revealing the gleaming gold badge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. "Special Agent David Carter, FBI," he stated, his voice level but carrying the unmistakable resonance of command honed in places where orders meant the difference between life and death. His eyes, the same deep brown as his daughter's but now blazing with a righteous, controlled fury, locked onto Kincaid's. "Now. I order you to remove the weight of your authority, and your knee, from my child." The air crackled. The title, Special Agent, the glint of gold, the sheer force of Carter's persona, part seasoned warrior, part federal lawman, created a palpable shift. Kincaid hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty, perhaps even fear, finally dawning in his eyes. For the first time, he seemed to see not a suspect, but a girl, someone's daughter. And that someone was now standing before him, radiating an aura that brooked no argument. Slowly, reluctantly, the crushing weight lifted from Imani's neck. She gasped, air flooding her starving lungs in a ragged, painful torrent. Strong hands gently turned her over, lifting her. An arm, powerful and familiar, wrapped around her trembling shoulders. "I'm here now, baby," Agent Carter murmured, his voice thick with a pain that mirrored her own. "You're safe. Daddy's here." Imani clung to him, a sob finally breaking free. Through her tears, she saw her father's face, the man she'd often thought too distant, too consumed by his demanding, often secret, work. But now, his eyes, usually so composed, were filled with a raw, broken anguish. Not just anger, but a father's hope shattered by the brutal reality of what his child had just endured. He had always told her, "Imani, see the world with your heart, and always strive to be the good in it. But never forget, my darling, that too often, the world will see your skin before it ever sees your heart." The truth of those words had never been more agonizingly clear. The street fell into a stunned, heavy silence. No sirens, no shouting, just the stark, undeniable tableau, a child, brutalized for an act of kindness, while the system designed to protect her had instead, through the actions of one officer, seen her as a threat. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room were painfully bright, clinical, offering no comfort. Imani lay on a gurney, the scrape on her cheek stinging, her neck aching with a dull, persistent throb. Her mother sat beside her, her face a mask of silent, unspeakable grief. She held Imani's hand, her own trembling, her eyes tracing the torn fabric of Imani's hoodie, the dirt smudged on her jeans. No words were spoken, but Imani felt her mother's fear, her anger, her shame, the crushing weight of a parent who had witnessed their child pinned to the ground, helpless. The doctor, after a brief examination, declared Imani physically fine. But Imani knew, with a chilling certainty, that there was a vast, unbridgeable chasm between being fine and truly being alive after a knee had pressed the life from you. The following week at school was a blur of averted gazes and hushed whispers. She was no longer just Imani, the quiet girl who aced her history exams and volunteered on weekends. She had become a headline: FBI agent's daughter brutalized by police during charity food delivery. She was someone's daughter, yes. But in their eyes, she was now a sensation, a story, a symbol of something terrible. The police department issued a terse statement: the officer involved acted according to established protocol. An internal review is pending. Protocol. Did protocol not include humanity? Did it not include recognizing a child, a volunteer badge, the sheer terror in a young girl's eyes? That evening, her father sat with her. Agent Carter, the stoic FBI agent, the former ranger, was just Dad. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a profound understanding. "Imani," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "what happened to you? It's not just your story anymore. It's become a story for everyone who has ever been judged by their appearance, for every parent who fears for their child walking down the street. You have a voice now, people are listening." His words, born from years of navigating a world that often saw his uniform or his skin before it saw the man, ignited something within Imani. A spark of defiance, a refusal to be silenced, a need to reclaim her narrative. She would not be just a headline. She would be a voice. She called for a meeting in the school gymnasium. She expected maybe a handful of friends, a few concerned teachers. Instead, the place was packed. Students, teachers, reporters, neighbors, even Mrs. Watson, frail but resolute, leaning on her walker in the front row. Imani stepped up to the microphone, her hands shaking, but her voice, when it came, was surprisingly clear, imbued with a strength she hadn't known she possessed. "My name is Imani Carter. I am 16 years old. Last Saturday, I was delivering food to our elderly, wearing this hoodie, and this badge." She held up the slightly torn, "Feed Our Elders" badge. "I wasn't a threat. I was a helper." But this system, represented by that officer, didn't see a helper. It saw a suspect. It saw my skin. It saw my hoodie. And it tried to crush me. A hush fell over the gymnasium. I survived because my father is an FBI agent. Because there were cameras. Because Mrs. Watson and others cried out. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. But not everyone is that lucky. George Floyd didn't survive. Breonna Taylor didn't survive. Tyre Nichols didn't survive. Their names became hashtags, their lives statistics. This fight isn't just for me. It's for all of them. It's for every single one of us who believes that our humanity should come before our hoodies, before our skin color. I will not be silent anymore. And I'm asking you, please, don't you be silent either. Tears were streaming down faces in the audience. Some were crying openly. Others sat in stunned, thoughtful silence. For many, it was the first time the abstract headlines had become a visceral, human reality. Imani had not just told her story, she had ignited a call to action. The fight for justice for Imani Carter began in earnest. Spearheaded by her father, Agent David Carter, who brought to bear not only his FBI resources and legal acumen but also the strategic discipline of his military past, a civil rights lawsuit was filed against Officer Kincaid and the police department. The community rallied. Natalie, from the previous story's neighborhood, or a new character fulfilling a similar role of an ally with crucial footage, provided her damning video evidence. Mrs. Watson, despite her frailty, gave a powerful deposition. The small, "Feed Our Elders" badge, once a symbol of Imani's quiet service, became a potent piece of evidence, alongside photographs of the bruises blooming on Imani's neck and face. The legal battle was arduous. Officer Kincaid, backed by his union and department, initially presented a front of arrogant denial. But as evidence mounted, the clear video footage contradicting his report, eyewitness testimonies, the sheer unreasonableness of his actions against a child volunteer, his defense crumbled. In court, Imani, no longer just a victim but a powerful witness for the prosecution in her own civil case, recounted her experience with a clarity and composure that belied her age. She spoke not of vengeance, but of accountability, of the need for a system that valued black lives as readily as it presumed their guilt. The verdict, when it came, was what many legal analysts called a small but heavy win. Officer Kincaid was found liable for excessive force and violation of civil rights. He faced disciplinary action, including suspension and mandatory retraining, and a significant financial settlement was awarded, a victory, yes, but one that could never truly erase the trauma or the underlying systemic issues. But Imani knew the courtroom was only one battlefield. Inspired by the outpouring of support and her own experience, she, along with her friends and with guidance from her father and other community leaders, founded a youth-led initiative, Before Hoodie. Their mission was simple yet profound: to challenge stereotypes, foster dialogue, and promote positive community engagement, particularly between youth of color and law enforcement. The Feed Our Elders program didn't just continue, it expanded. Every Saturday, an even larger group of young people, from all backgrounds, fanned out across the neighborhood. They wore their hoodies with pride, a defiant reclamation of an item of clothing so often used to criminalize them. And instead of the old laminated badges, they now wore small, bright blue pins, designed by Imani herself. Engraved on each pin were the words, "We are not just color. We are light." The initiative began to attract local, then national, attention. Schools invited Imani to speak. Other communities started their own Before Hoodie chapters. The blue pin became a quiet symbol of solidarity and hope. Agent David Carter watched his daughter's transformation with a father's pride, mixed with the somber knowledge of the world's persistent dangers. He knew this was not the end of the fight, perhaps not even the beginning of the end. But it was, undeniably, a powerful new front, led by a generation determined to illuminate the shadows. Imani, standing before a group of new young volunteers, her voice now confident and clear, would often say, "What happened to me was an attempt to extinguish a light." But they didn't realize they were trying to douse a spark that would ignite 1,000 more. We are those lights. And together, our glow is too bright to ignore. If Imani's journey from a terrified victim to a courageous young leader has touched your heart and sparked a light in you, please like this video, share it to spread the message of hope and resilience, and subscribe for more stories that challenge injustice and celebrate the human spirit. What does the phrase, Before Hoodie, mean to you? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to always comment respect, as we build a community dedicated to understanding and positive change. We are watching. We are listening. And together, we are changing.